May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. We have an unusual day today in our readings for ordinary time, in that all of the readings actually fit together. They all follow a theme, talk about the same kind of idea. That doesn't always happen in ordinary time. Usually two of them do, but not all four. So what is the commonality between the four today? Well, they all talk about hearing God, and either the consequences of not listening or the benefits of listening. In our reading from Wisdom, we have the downside. What happens when we don't take wisdom into our hearts? What happens when we reject wisdom? The one that has rejected wisdom, when a calamity falls upon them, will be laughed at when they ask for help. That's pretty harsh. Saying, I've been trying to lead you your whole life. I've been giving you the wisdom that you need, the guidance that you need, and you've rejected it, and now you want my help? Once you've messed everything up? Where if you had just followed what I asked in the first place, you wouldn't be in this position. That's the downside of rejecting wisdom. We also have some of that in the gospel today, where when Jesus is speaking openly about what is to come, about the fact that he has to die and in 3 days he will rise again, Peter, the person that Jesus declared, "On you my church will be built. You are the rock." Peter tries to shush him, saying, "You've been telling us to keep quiet all this time, and now you're saying it openly? That's supposed to be private knowledge. That's just for us, not for them." And Jesus' response is, "Get behind me, Satan." To Peter, the one who's supposed to be the strongest of the disciples, the most dependable. Peter had trouble following wisdom, allowing the wisdom there when it didn't fit with what he thought things should be. But we have the other side of that too. What happens when we do accept wisdom into our hearts? In every generation, she passes into holy souls and makes them friends of God and prophets. For God loves nothing as so much as the person who lives with wisdom. And in the letter of James, it doesn't speak directly about wisdom, but it does talk about the choices we make. With the same tongue, we bless God and curse those with whom we disagree. Curse those who don't fit what we think they should be. With the same lips. And this should not be so. In every one of them, it's a choice. We are given wisdom, and we choose whether or not to take the wisdom, take her into our hearts. We choose whether or not to follow God's guidance. And we know the consequences of both choices. So why don't we always follow wisdom? Well, why didn't Peter? It didn't fit his view of what things were supposed to be like. What does the world right now say things are supposed to be like for us? Buy, buy, buy. You must have. And once you have, you must have what's next. And where does that lead? Well, you've got to have what's next, because it never stops. And that's exactly opposite of what wisdom says. What wisdom says is you have everything you need already. You have been given an abundance. And out of that, God can do anything with you. So what is it that we need? It's not those things, but we're told we do. We're told over and over again, by advertising, by our friends, by everyone we meet, by the last thing we bought says we need the next thing because they go together. This works much better if you get this to go with it. It's a very difficult cycle to break. A little over a week ago, or I guess it was during this past week, Victoria and I were watching a movie. I can't remember what the name of it is, but how many of you have ever watched Monty Python's Flying Circus? Do you remember those very strange animations that were always part of it? Those were done by Terry Gilliam, who, since then, I think he's only made 2 movies, but they're both very bizarre. And this one, which came out 2 years ago, is no different from everything he's done. It's very bizarre. But the central idea of it is that there's the management, who we can think of as the 1%ers, that are trying to prove a mathematical theorem. And that mathematical theorem is that nothing is everything. Because if they can prove mathematically that nothing is everything, then there is no meaning to life. That this whole idea of consumerism is all there is. So people can stop thinking about what comes after. Because nothing is everything. It's a very bizarre concept, but it's where we are in the world. This idea that, either everything is nothing or nothing is everything. It doesn't matter which way you put it. And we have to break that. And it's not something that we can break by buying something new. It's not something we can break by going out and becoming part of yet another group, or buying into some new ideology that some politician is giving us. It's only something we can break by accepting wisdom. By listening to where we are called to be and knowing that that's enough. It's fine to buy things. It's fine to want things. But we don't need them. What we need, we already have. And then when we can separate between need and want, then once again we have a choice. Thanks be to God.